I thought my life had completely crumbled the day my ex-fiancé's new girlfriend humiliated me in front of everyone at my cousin's wedding. I couldn't have guessed that the stranger who saw it all would turn everything around for me. What followed not only stunned everyone else, it floored me. If you've ever felt ignored, unimportant, or defeated, my story might just remind you that life has a funny way of rerouting you toward something bigger. Stay with me until the end. The twist? You'll never see it coming. I'm Heidi, and half a year ago, I genuinely believed everything was falling apart. At 28, I was working as a flight attendant for a low-cost airline, scraping by in a cramped studio apartment that barely had enough space for me and my dreams. But all of that was secondary to the heartbreak. The real ache came from the fact that Jake, my ex-fiancé, had left me for someone else. Her name was Isabella, the kind of woman who seemed born into luxury. She had wealth, social clout, and a fashion sense fit for the runway. I couldn't compete. Jake and I had spent 3 years together. We talked about forever, kids, careers, even picked out a home we both dreamed of owning someday. And then, out of nowhere, he walked through our door one evening and said he'd fallen for someone else. Someone who, in his words, could offer him a lifestyle more aligned with his goals. Translation: someone richer, someone more connected, someone who wasn't a flight attendant trying to stretch her paycheck through the month. I remember staring at the engagement ring I had just handed back to him, sitting frozen on the couch, wondering what I lacked. Why wasn't I ever enough for the people I loved? Why did love always seem like a transaction I couldn't afford? The weeks that followed were a blur of emotional exhaustion. I buried myself in work, jumping from one flight to another, pouring coffee, giving safety briefings, and smiling for passengers who never looked up. I felt invisible, like I had faded into the background of everyone else's story. Nights were worse. I'd come home to that quiet apartment and scroll through Jake's new life with Isabella, their extravagant dates, their getaways to exotic islands, their smiles that looked like they belonged on a magazine cover. It hurt in ways I can't even describe. And then, an envelope arrived in my mailbox. My cousin Katie was getting married, and I had an invite. Of course, Jake would be there. They were old college buddies, and clearly, the breakup hadn't affected that. I spent days just staring at the invitation, wrestling with the decision. A part of me wanted to avoid the whole thing, avoid the whispers, the side glances, the uncomfortable hugs from people who didn't know what to say. But another part of me, the part that had something left to prove, decided I wasn't going to hide. I picked out a red dress from a clearance rack, styled my own hair and makeup, and made myself go. I repeated to myself that I had nothing to be ashamed of. My job was honest. I worked hard. My worth wasn't measured by the label on my clothes or the size of my bank account. That had to matter. The ceremony was lovely. Katie looked stunning, and I truly felt happy for her. I kept my distance from Jake and Isabella as long as I could, trying to soak up the rare joy of catching up with extended family. For the first time in months, I found myself smiling, even laughing, until I spotted them. Jake, in a perfectly tailored suit, and Isabella in a gown that shimmered under the lights, the kind of woman who makes heads turn just by walking in. She had this aura of command, like everyone should be honored to be in her presence. I tried to look away. I tried to pretend I didn't care. But fate wasn't going to let me off that easy. I was at the dessert table, internally debating between chocolate cake and fruit tart, when I heard her voice behind me. "Oh my God, Heidi! I didn't think I'd see you here." Her tone dripped with sweetness, but underneath it was something sharp and cold. I forced a polite smile. "Isabella, you look beautiful." And she did. Her dress was this elegant champagne tone, and her diamonds sparkled like fire. "Thanks, sweetie. You look cute, too." That pause, that lingering hesitation before cute, it said everything. Such a darling little dress. Very affordable chic. Jake appeared beside her, visibly uncomfortable. "Hey, Heidi. How've you been?" "I'm good, thank you," I replied calmly, even though my pulse was thudding in my ears. "So, still flying the friendly skies?" Isabella asked with a fake innocent smile. "Jake mentioned you were still with that budget airline." Must be tough dealing with cranky passengers and modest pay. I could feel the eyes of nearby guests sliding in our direction. It's honest work, I said, voice steady. I make sure people travel safely. She laughed. It was the kind of laugh meant to belittle you. Ah, that's adorable. A sky waitress. That's what you are, right? She turned to Jake with a smirk. Remember our first-class trip to Paris? That airline's attendants were polished. Nothing like the low-cost ones. I wanted the ground to open and swallow me whole. But she wasn't done. There's nothing wrong with service work, of course. Some people are just built for simpler things. Jake, on the other hand, has ambition. He's expanding his company overseas. We're scouting properties in Manhattan now. You really have to keep your circle full of winners, you know. She glanced at my outfit again, the unspoken insult hanging in the air. Not everyone's cut out for that kind of life. I felt the tears building behind my eyes, but I refused to give her that satisfaction. Excuse me, I said softly. I need to step away. I walked, not too fast, but just fast enough to escape. Behind me, I could hear her whispering to Jake. She's trying so hard. Did you see that dress? I didn't make it to the restroom. I ended up in the hotel lobby, desperately trying to breathe. The shame felt suffocating. All my buried insecurities clawed their way back to the surface. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was someone who settled. Someone who didn't reach high enough. I was gathering the courage to go retrieve my purse when a gentle voice behind me spoke. Excuse me, miss, are you okay? I turned and saw an older man, probably in his 60s, with soft eyes and a gentle presence. He was dressed simply but elegantly, and his energy was calming. I'm fine, I whispered, brushing tears from my cheeks. Just needed some fresh air. I saw what happened, he said with quiet sympathy. And I want you to know, you handled yourself with remarkable grace. My face flushed. You saw that? I did. And I was impressed. I gave a bitter laugh. By what? Me getting humiliated in front of everyone. No, he said. By the dignity you maintained when someone else chose cruelty. That says everything about who you are. I studied his face. There was something oddly familiar, but I couldn't place it. Thank you, but I really should be going. Of course, he said. But may I ask your name? Heidi Parker, I replied. He smiled warmly. A pleasure, Heidi. I'm Harrison. He handed me a handkerchief. I hope brighter days find you soon. I thanked him and returned to the reception just long enough to collect my things. I didn't say goodbye to Katie. I knew I'd call her the next day and explain. Right then, I just needed out. The ride home was a blur. Tears, frustration, all tangled up in self-doubt. Was Isabella right? Had I become someone content with less? I sulked most of the weekend. But by Monday, something shifted. I told myself she was wrong. I didn't want less. I just hadn't figured out how to claim more. That's when the phone rang. Miss Parker? This is Jennifer from Sterling Airlines. We received your resume for our senior flight attendant position and would love to schedule an interview. I blinked. I didn't apply for anything at Sterling Airlines. We have your application on file, submitted last week, she said cheerfully. It comes with a significant salary boost and premium benefits. Are you available tomorrow? I was too desperate for change to argue. Sterling Airlines was elite. Their team was paid well, respected and admired. However this had happened, I wasn't going to question the blessing. The interview was a dream. They offered me the job immediately, nearly doubling my salary. They even offered me a gorgeous apartment downtown through their corporate housing, at a fraction of what it should have cost. Then, everything else started snowballing. The bank called to refund me for years of errors. A sweepstakes I didn't recall entering sent me a prize letter. It was all too perfect. And then I thought of Harrison. There'd been something about him that day, something I couldn't shake. A quick online search made my heart skip. He wasn't just anyone. He was Harrison Matthews, one of the wealthiest men in the country. His son Daniel was a tech billionaire. Their family was private, philanthropic, and powerful. Why would someone like him help someone like me? 2 weeks later, my phone rang again. A polite assistant asked if I'd meet Mr. Matthews for lunch. I agreed, nervous beyond belief. He was already waiting when I arrived. "Heidi, thank you for coming," he said with a kind smile. I blurted the question before I could stop myself. Are you behind everything that's happened to me?" He nodded. "I am. I hope you don't mind." "But why?" I asked. "You don't even know me." "But I do," he said softly. "I saw you rise above that situation. I saw your kindness. That tells me who you are. And I believe in helping good people." Tears burned my eyes again. I don't know what to say." "You don't need to," he replied. "But I do have a request." He leaned forward. "I'd like you to meet my son." My heart stopped. "Your son?" "Daniel." "He's a good man," Harrison said. "But it's hard for him to meet people who see him, not his money. I think you two might just understand each other." "I'm not like him," I protested. "I'm not from his world." "Exactly," Harrison said. "You're from the real one." A week later, I nervously dressed for dinner with Daniel Matthews. Just a modest dress, something that made me feel confident. He arrived in jeans and a button-down shirt, and when he smiled, it was the warmest thing I'd felt in months. We talked for hours, about everything, about nothing. He was brilliant, humble, curious, and he listened. "My dad told me about the wedding," he said. "He couldn't stop talking about how you carried yourself." "It wasn't exactly a proud moment for me," I admitted. "It was a moment that showed your strength," he said. Over time, we grew closer. He opened new parts of the world to me. But more importantly, he made me feel seen, deeply seen. With him, I didn't feel like I was less. I felt loved. And maybe, just maybe, Isabella had been wrong. 6 months after the wedding, Daniel invited me to a quiet dinner with him and Harrison. After dessert, Harrison stood. "A toast," he said, smiling. "To Heidi, my future daughter-in-law." I gasped. "Future?" Daniel grinned, pulling out a velvet box. I was planning to ask more romantically. But since the cat's out of the bag, "Heidi, will you marry me?" Through joyful tears, I said yes. Word of our engagement hit the society pages fast. It didn't take long for it to reach Jake and Isabella. At a charity event the next week, I saw them. Jake looked unchanged. Isabella? Dimmed. Smaller. And stunned. Daniel placed a hand gently on my back. "Those the ones?" "Yes," I said calmly. "Wanna leave?" "No. I think I'd like to stay." Isabella approached. "Heidi, what a surprise. And this is Daniel Matthews," he said, offering his hand. "Heidi's fiancé." Recognition hit her like a brick wall. "Matthews as in the son of the man you humiliated Heidi in front of," Daniel said smoothly. "That's right." Her jaw dropped. Jake stammered a soft, "Congratulations." I smiled. "Thank you. Wishing you both the best." We chatted briefly, then walked away. Daniel squeezed my hand. "How's it feel?" I looked back one last time. Like justice, but also like life reminding me that even our worst moments might be the beginning of something incredible. And that's exactly what happened. One painful night led me to a kind stranger. That stranger led me to a new chapter, one built on love, respect, and finally believing I was worthy of everything I'd once thought was out of reach. If this story moved you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more real stories of strength and transformation. And tell me, what unexpected blessing changed your life? I'd love to hear your story.